And how you doing? How you living? How you feeling, folks? Back for another episode of the Bases Loaded podcast, brought to you by the Idiots Podcast Network. Now, of course, I'm your favorite host. I'm idiot number 0. My name is Zach. As always, very good to be back on the airwaves. Always love talking to my folks over here. So, with that being said, this is just kind of the final episode in the divisional preview series. So this episode is going to be the last episode. We're talking about the AL Central. And, with that being said, let's just hop right into it. There's no reason to wait any longer. This is the last of the rotation. So we'll get right into it. We're going to first start talking about the Minnesota Twins. Now, the Minnesota Twins, I would say they had a rather quiet free agency. They did lose some quality pieces. I would definitely say over the period of free agency, they definitely lost a little bit. We saw Sonny Gray go for 3 years, 75 to the Cardinals. We saw Kenta Maeda leave to go to the Tigers. Emilio Pagan left. Joey Gallo left. Tyler Mahle left. Even Miguel Sano, longtime staple there, left. A lot of those guys kind of just filling out the roster. I mean, Sonny Gray was definitely a great pitcher for them. Maeda the same. Emilio Pagan definitely, and him and Dylan Florio were nice in the back of the bullpen. Now, with that being said, they definitely lost a good chunk, but doesn't mean they didn't go out, spend a little bit of money in free agency. Now, what we're gonna do is we'll talk about the lineup first. Kind of, really, the only major addition here is gonna be Carlos Santana coming over from Milwaukee. The guy's gonna play first base, a little switch hit action. Has been a quality bat for many of his years in the league. Last year had 23 home runs, batting .240. Something that this team could really use is, Carlos Santana's bat. They just need that power in the lineup, when guys like Byron Buxton just aren't able to be there every day. And, the only other power hitter you have on this team is Max Kepler, who's still a little shaky. So I would argue that, making sure you have some guys that really have some pop in the lineup is definitely helpful. You'll have another season of Correa, which will be fun. Eduardo Julian's finally going to come up. We're going to see what he has to offer, which I'm very excited about. Royce Lewis, former number 1 overall pick in, what year was it, 2017, is going to get some more burn. Now, he's someone I'm very excited to see this Minnesota Twins team really utilize at that third base position. Makes their left side of that infield just very, very dangerous, with Correa and Royce Lewis. I really do like that side of the ball. Now, they do have a lot of guys that they're bringing up through their system, trying to see who works, who doesn't. That includes Ryan Jeffers, Alex Kirilloff, Matt Wallner, Eddie Julian. Some of these guys, they've been with Minnesota for a long, long time, and really just trying to figure out what they got, what they have in these guys. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun for them over this next season to really see who's going to be a viable player in the league for them. Now, with that being said, they did go out and pick up Manuel Margot, outfielder, mainly a defensive guy, had a decent season last year. So that's really all they did offensively. Offensively, I don't think they lost much, but they definitely didn't gain much either. Ooh, excuse me. Now, this is a team I definitely believe could go out, try to acquire another outfield DH player, and would definitely greatly help their team. A guy like JD Martinez, I know he's probably not going to come here, but I think JD Martinez would be a perfect type of fill-in player. Just another guy with a big, big bat, especially from the DH spot. You could expect him to hit about 30 home runs. I think it just adds a lot more depth to this team in general. Now, with that being said, we're going to move over to the pitching side of things, where they really didn't replace Sonny Gray. They did do, between Sonny Gray, Kenta Maeda, and Tyler Mahle, they really only picked up Anthony DeFalcani to kind of replace that role. Now, he's more of an innings eater, didn't have a great season last year. Don't know exactly what to expect from him, but it's going to be interesting. They also have Chris Paddock, a guy that I believe is coming off of Tommy John surgery from a couple years ago. Only had 5 innings pitched last season. I expect to see him with a full season. See what they can get out of Chris Paddock, a guy who's had some success in the MLB. Still rather young at 28 years old. I'm excited to see what Chris Paddock has left in the arm. They still have Pablo Lopez, extremely high quality pitcher. Joe Ryan, a guy who had some success last year. We're definitely expecting him to bring that ERA down at least by point 0.5, just because, sitting at a 4.51 is a little rough through 29 starts. So I hope that we see Joe Ryan's ERA drop a little bit. And then Bailey Ober, a guy that, has come up through the Minnesota system. We saw him get a good amount of time last year. And in all honesty, he might end up being their number 2 pitcher. I mean, Bailey Ober looked like he had a phenomenal season last year, 144 innings to the tune of a 3.43 ERA. I mean, look, when you're able to do that and be that effective through 26 games, it's really awesome. And in all honesty, it's something that I expect Bailey Ober to hopefully continue. Now, this team definitely went for the youth movement in terms of starting pitching, letting go of Sonny Gray, Kenta Maeda, just to kind of have those spots be filled in by guys like Bailey Ober and Joe Ryan, kind of get that next step for the youth movement in terms of pitchers. Now, their bullpen, they did do a little bit of work here. They picked up 4 guys. They picked up Justin Topa, Steven Okert, Josh Stoutmont, and Jay Jackson. Now, out of all these guys, I would say Jay Jackson had a good season last year. 29 innings to the tune of a 2.12. We also saw Justin Topa have a good season last year with Seattle. 69 innings pitched to a tune of a 2.61. That was awesome. If you look at this bullpen, they had a lot of stellar arms. We saw that Brock Stewart was unbelievably phenomenal last year through his limited action in 27 innings. We saw Johan Duran really step up and show that he's going to be an elite closer in this league, especially with elite speed. That's something that's pretty cool to see. I expect him to get better and better as the season goes on and as his career goes on. But yeah, I actually really do like this bullpen. I think it's been a well-crafted bullpen, and it's just, it's nice. I like where they're heading. I think they made a bunch of good moves there. Now, in terms of the rest of the team, it just feels like this lineup it's not bad, but it just feels like it doesn't have enough. There's no true shining star on this lineup, something that it feels like they really do need in terms of a bat. They just need one guy that is going to go out there and hit the fucking hell out of the ball. Now, with that being said, yeah, I would definitely say maybe they did a decent job in free agency, and obviously they clearly wanted to get younger at a lot of their starting pitching position. Now, I really wish they would have went out there and picked up one more high-quality bat. I think that really would have helped this lineup. Now, picking up Carlos Santana by all means is not a bad play, but it does feel like they're one more player away. Now, with that being said, this team is currently at 86.5 wins on the over-under, and in all honesty, I'm going to give them the under. I think this is a team that, they might end up going out there and winning somewhere in the mid-80s, but I don't think they end up getting up to the high 80s. I just don't see it. Now, with that being said, we're going to move on to our next team here, but right after a short break, I'll be right back to discuss the next AL Central team. And we're back, baby. Now we're talking about the Detroit Tigers. Now, Detroit Tigers had an interesting offseason. We did see them, we'll talk about the free agency period first. We saw them lose Spencer Turnbull, a guy that really wasn't super high priority, and they had also lost Erod, Eduardo Rodriguez to the Cardinals on a 4-year, $80 million deal. Now, losing Erod definitely is going to be felt. Erod had a great career, pretty good pitcher down there in Detroit for the couple years he was down there. Now, with that being said, outside of that, doesn't seem like they've lost all too much. Now, they've also lost Matthew Boyd, a starting pitcher they've had in the rotation for a long time now, come up through the system. But we'll start talking about kind of what they have done this free agency. So let's start with the bats. In terms of what they lost, they didn't really lose anything from their starting lineup. Rather, they gained. They pick up Gio Urshela, quality, kind of util middle corner infielder. So that's awesome. You also picked up Mark Canha, a guy who had a pretty good season last year from the left field spot. Now, with these two additions, I think that just helps the lineup a little bit. Gio's a solid bat, solid defensive player. He's just a good all-around player. Now, last year, he only had 2 home runs through 228 plate appearances. Now, just because I'm curious, I'm going to punch up Gio Urshela's numbers. Urshela. Ella, under my Gio Urshela. Ella, All right. So, Gio is, he's had a decent career. He's going to be going on his age 32 season. Now, last year, he didn't do all too much. 2 home runs, 24 RBIs through 228 plate appearances, played 62 games last year. Now, in a full season slate, I expect him to hit about, like 10-ish home runs, maybe hitting about 50 ribbies. Get on the base paths a lot, He's been consistently a decent hitter, hitting around, I want to say that 277 average mark for his career. So that's something that's pretty awesome. You're expecting him to get on the base paths, just get the innings moving. This could be a guy that, depending on where they put him in their lineup, I could really see him being a high run scorer for this team. Now, it just depends on where he's going to be in the lineup. But I do like Gio as an ad for this team. I think that was really high quality. They went out, they picked up Mark Canha, formerly of the Mets and then of Milwaukee. I don't think this Mark Canha deal was a bad deal. Obviously, guy's been in the league for a little bit. He does have some quality at bats to him. He's not the greatest player by any stretch, but he's definitely going to be able to get on base. And this team is just trying to get players that are going to get on base. I think that's definitely the one thing they kind of lacked last year. They had the pop from guys like Javi Baez and guys like Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson, but I think adding guys like Canha and Gio really add into that, that just getting on base effect. You get so many more runs, so many more opportunities, so many more points just by getting guys on base. So I think that's really going to help this team. Now, in terms of what they did to the bench, nothing. Their bench looks fine. But really, the thing I wanted to kind of move to next is going to be their starting rotation. Now, they did lose one starting rotation piece in Erod, but they did go out and picked up Jack Flaherty and Kenta Maeda to kind of shore up this starting rotation. Something I really enjoyed that they did, along with Tyreek Skubal. Skubal has been a player that they've had on this team for a little bit, come up through the system, has had a lot of success. So I expect to see him, kind of with a full slate of games this year, to be just as dominant for this team, being their true ace. Now, with that being said, I like the Jack Flaherty pickup. He's coming off a down year, but still, at the worst, if he's going to be a decently quality innings eater pitcher, I think that's still huge for them. Kenta Maeda coming off kind of a year last year too, but this is a guy who's had a lot of career success, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him kind of get back to that career success this man has had. Now, two of the other guys they have in this rotation, Matt Manning and Reese Olson, they're obviously two younger prospects that have been coming up through the system for a little bit. Reese Olson came over from Milwaukee 2 years ago, whereas Matt Manning was kind of been in the system since 2016. So I'm intrigued to see how these two players kind of, if they're going to flourish or kind of flounder underneath their newfound roles in this lineup, really seeing, who has the ability to play in the MLB. I think Matt Manning more so than Reese Olson. This might be one of his kind of final chances, going into year 3 of MLB service time. I'm very intrigued to see what Matt Manning can do for this team, especially because of the amount of time he's already had in the league. Now, with that being said, we're going to move on to the bullpen. Not much changed here. They kind of had an alright bullpen last year, but they did go out and picked up Andrew Chafin and Shelby Miller. Now, I do think these two pitchers, both age 33, one's a lefty, one's a righty. I think this adds a little bit more balance to this bullpen in terms of having another quality lefty. But, last year this team had a lot of success from the bullpen, whether it was Alex Lange, who had a 3.68 with 26 saves, or Jason Foley, who had a great year last year. He had a 2.61 through 69 innings. Will Vest had a good year last year. Shelby Miller had a good year last year. Tyler Holton had a good year last year. So, with that just being in mind, I think that their bullpen looks pretty solid. I would not be afraid to let this bullpen come out into this game a little early around the 6th, the 5th, 6th inning if it needs to. So with that being said, I actually really do like the Detroit Tigers roster. I think they've definitely improved on, just this team in general, all facets of this team. I'm really, really kind of excited to see what they have. And now they also have some young guys coming up through the system too. I just wanted to talk about this one more time. Guys like Parker Meadows and Colt Keith, guys who haven't had a lot of time at that MLB level. And just to throw in a couple more names like Spencer Torkelson, Kerry Carpenter, and Riley Green, a lot of these guys haven't had a lot of time in the league. So they're really trying to figure out if these batters that have been coming up through the system are worthwhile, if they're, going to be able to bang for this team. And it's something I think they'll definitely find out who's going to be worthwhile for them. Spencer Torkelson obviously had a great year last year. I expect him to do more of the same. But really, I'm expecting either one of Colt Keith and Parker Meadows to kind of pop out onto the scene a little bit. So I'm excited to see what that's going to, when that happens and how that kind of shakes out. So with that being said, the Tigers are currently at 80.5 games. I'm actually going to take the over on the Tigers at 80.5. I think they've improved across the board. And, they don't necessarily need to be a winning team. A 500 team is good enough to make that a solid dub, but I'm taking the Tigers. I really feel like they've improved this season. And, it feels like they have a lot of fun youth on this team ready to kind of take the front stage of the MLB. So with that being said, we're going to move on to our next team, and that's going to be the Cleveland Guardians. All right, so now we're talking about the Cleveland Guardians. Now the Guardians, let's see. I don't know if they had an interesting offseason. All right. It was very, we'll call it very mid. Nothing really happened. I mean, they lost Zach Plesac, who had some success for this team. Ronaldo Lopez, a quality reliever, got 3-year, I believe $30 million from the Atlanta Braves. And then we also saw Giolito leave. Now, Giolito, I believe, was kind of like I feel like he was a piece that was always going to leave. I actually didn't realize he was on the Guardians for some reason. I don't know why. I thought Lucas Giolito was on the Angels last season. But Giolito. But regardless, I don't think this Guardians team is that great. They're pretty all right. I mean, like a lot of other teams in the league, they're trying to see if a lot of these young guys have any real pop to them. Now, this team didn't go out there and sign any big free agents, so I'm just going to say they lost free agency. Just losing Ronaldo Lopez in and of itself is good enough. Oh, so he did get traded to Cleveland. Okay. I didn't realize that. Oh, he was bad on fucking Cleveland. Holy shit. All right, well, I didn't realize that he played like 4 games for Cleveland, but Giolito did play like 4 games for Cleveland. Regardless of that being said, losing him, it doesn't feel like that big of a loss. But as we look at this team, they have some quality players. I like Steven Kwan. I like Jimenez. Obviously, Han Ram is still one of the best. He's probably the best third baseman in the entire league. Josh Naylor, young guy they've had coming up through the system. They want to see how much pop he's got. He had a pretty decent season last year to the tune of 300 batting average, 17 homers, 10 steals. He's not a bad player by any means. They also have Bo Naylor. I'm gonna assume that's his brother. Coming up through the Cleveland system. He's a catcher. He's also been halfway decent. He's only had a little bit of service time in the league, so I expect him to really take over that catching role this year. So that's going to be very exciting. They also have some other young guys like Kyle Manzardo. Never heard of you. I don't know if you're good or not. But he currently is the number 1 ranked prospect in the organization as per 2023. And then we're also going to see Brian Rocchio, another guy with very minimal service time. He's going to come up, see what he has to offer from that shortstop position. He's currently ranked the number 2 overall prospect as per last year in this team's system. So they're bringing up their best prospects, seeing what they got. I actually like picking up Ramon Laureano. I think he's a pretty decent outfielder. Has had some issues the last couple of years, but I think he's someone that I'm excited to watch play for this team. They really didn't do all too much, in this lineup. They really just kind of picked up more and kept bringing up more Cleveland guys through the system, just trying to see what their prospects have. Now, in terms of the bench, they did do a couple things. They signed Austin Hedges to back up what I assume is going to be Bo Naylor's starting gig. We also saw Estevan Florial, former Yankees outfielder, get moved here. Now, their bench isn't anything to, write home about. It's just a bench. Now, as we keep moving, this team, you can very much tell that free agency, this team was clearly unaffected. They barely did anything. They still have Shane Bieber in their, as their ace in their rotation. Tristan McKenzie, a guy they're hoping can start to flourish into the pitcher they believe he can be. Tanner Beebe, a guy who's had 1 year of service time. He was really good last year, so hopefully he can repeat the same thing. He had a sub-3 ERA through 25 games, so that was pretty awesome. Logan Allen, another guy with very minimal service time. He played 24 games last year. I hope he's going to be halfway decent. I'm excited to see what he's got to offer. And then same thing with Gavin Williams. Just some more young. This team has a lot of young pitching prospects. They're trying to see kind of who has what, and a lot of these guys were picked up. 3 of these guys specifically, Beebe, Allen, and Williams, they were all acquired in 2020 and 2021, so getting these young guys into the starting rotation, seeing if they have the juice, I think that's really beneficial for this Cleveland team, especially with guys like Tanner Beebe, who's already kind of proven they got the juice. Now, with that being said, we'll move on to their bullpen. Their bullpen's pretty, the same. I mean, they went out, picked up Scott Barlow, former closer of, I believe the Kansas City Royals had moved on to the Padres last year. I don't think that's a bad pickup. Definitely not anything to write home about. Like, oh, we got Scott Barlow. He's fucking awesome. I mean, he's all right. He's definitely going to add some good innings to this bullpen. I think that's definitely something they needed. They also picked up Ben Lively. Can't say I know much about you, but through your 88 innings pitched last year to a tune of a 5.38. I wouldn't say that was all too great, but you are a long relief pitcher, so I don't know. We'll see where that kind of goes from here. Now, with that being said, this bullpen is mid. There's not a lot else there. I mean, Clase is obviously he's in a class of his own. Phenomenal closer. But outside of that, this team just feels very mid. It doesn't feel like they really had any intentions of getting better. Now, they're at 78.5 wins for this season, but I'm going to hit the under. I just don't think this team has the juice, has the pop to do what they want to do. And they won 76 games last year. I think they got worse, so I don't really see how they hit the 78 win mark. I don't think it's in the cards for them. Now, with that being said, we're going to move on to the next team, and that's going to be the Kansas City Royals. As soon as it slowly pulls up, there we go. Now, the Kansas City Royals had a bad season last year. They were 56 and 106, just absolutely rough. And they really didn't do a lot in free agency either. Now, they're going to lose Zach Greinke, probably to retirement. So, hey, it happens. Nothing you can do. They really didn't lose any other major pieces in free agency. I didn't realize Hunter Dozier was still in the league. That is crazy. But they didn't lose a ton that I would be all too bothered to lose. In terms of their lineup, they went out, picked up Hunter Renfroe, a nice little ad. Needed some guy with a little bit more pop in the lineup, especially from that outfield spot. So I think he adds a nice little value signing there. Ooh, excuse me. So I like that pickup. I think that was a solid pickup. They also pick up, former second baseman / outfielder Adam Frazier to come off the bench, a guy who I think is going to get a lot of time in this lineup if they're looking to win a lot of games. A guy I like, pretty decent MLB career up to this point. But yeah, I mean, the more I look at this lineup, the more I realize, it's another team with a youth movement outside of Salvi and Hunter Renfroe. I mean, they don't have a guy that's over the age of 27 on this lineup. So really, like I said, they're really trying to see who's got what, which young guys are going to be the young guys of the future for this team. And obviously, Bobby Witt, who signed a long-term deal, is going to be at the head of that conversation. But we also see guys like MJ Melendez, Vinny Pasquantino, some of the other young guys who've gotten an opportunity to play a little bit and really have shown us that they have some quality to them. It's just going to be intriguing to see, where they go from here. I want to see these guys improve. I'm really excited to see them improve, and I think they have a lot on the table. Now, other guys that can be included in this list are Michael Massey, Nelson Velasquez, and Mikel Garcia are all other guys that, rather young. They're going to give them an opportunity to play and really see what they have to offer the team. Now, I will say I actually do kind of like this lineup. I don't know why, but just looking at it, I kind of fuck with it. I like where they're heading for some reason. Now, with that being said, they do have two starting pitchers currently hurt. That's Chris Bubic and Kyle Wright. Kyle Wright came over from Atlanta via a trade in November of 2023, so I'm going to be intrigued to see how he gets back. He's coming off of shoulder surgery from October 11th of 2023, so that'll be interesting to see if he can get back. Now, with that being said, Chris Bubic's kind of been on that Tommy John, he got Tommy John surgery almost a full year ago, so that'll be interesting as well. Now, this team did a good chunk of stuff, in terms of their starting rotation. I've never heard of Cole Reagans, but I feel like I did hear about something, Cole Reagans being talked about over the Chris Rose rotation. Do believe that they mentioned Cole Reagans as being a up-and-coming lefty pitcher, for this team. Someone's got a lot of excitement, a lot of juice for them, and based on what I can tell, from his previous year's stats, I mean, for a guy who's 26, but 1 year of service time, if he's able to replicate what he did last year, 12 games pitched to a 3.47 ERA, I think he can expand upon the games played and really just show that he's a quite good starting pitcher in this league. And I think, Cole Reagans going to have an awesome opportunity this year. He's going to have all year long to do it. So that's going to be very exciting. Really the only main pitching prospect in this rotation. So that's going to be exciting. They also went out, picked up Michael Wacha. Guys had some career success. Same thing with Seth Lugo. Guys had some career success. Seth Lugo had a lot of success last year, moving over to the starting pitching rotation, after being a reliever for I can't tell you how many years in the Mets. But Seth Lugo had a decent year last year, and I'm always excited for Seth Lugo. So I'm going to hope Seth Lugo has a good year too. Brady Singer, guy who's come up through the Kansas City Royals organization, has had a little bit of success, but looks more and more like an innings eater. A guy I root for because I know he did, upon getting signed with the Royals, I know he bought out his parents' house. So it's a guy that's got a lot of, cool juices going with him. I like Brady Singer. He seems like a cool dude. I hope that he, can turn that ERA around. Had a 5.5 ERA through 29 games pitched last year. I hope this 27-year-old can turn that around and really show that he's a viable starting pitcher. Now, with that being said, we're going to quickly go through this bullpen. Bullpen-wise, they did pick up a couple names. They went out there, they picked up Will Smith, formerly of the, of the Rangers, and I believe the Houston Astros, so that's a nice little signing there. A guy had 22 saves last year, definitely not the best year of his career last year, but a guy that can definitely add some value to a pen, especially from the lefty spot. They went out, they picked up Chris Stratton, Nick Anderson, John Schreiber, and I like those three names by themselves are awesome pickups. I mean, in all honesty, this team feels like a team that has two closers on it right now between Nick Anderson and Will Smith, and I really like that. And that's not even talking about James McArthur, the guy who they had, they had him last year. He did a little bit of closing, currently put into that closer role. Now, obviously, the closer role is going to change. It's gonna have to go through some trials and tribulations to figure out who's going to be the main starter, main closer. But the things they did to their bullpen, I think, added a ton of value and really made this bullpen a viable bullpen. With some of the guys they added, I really think that John Schreiber, Nick Anderson, and Chris Stratton pickups really are gonna help this bullpen explode with success. And that's not even including the Will Smith pickup, which I think was a phenomenal signing. I really do like the direction their bullpen went. I think that's going to be rather beneficial for this team. Now, their over-under is currently set at 73.5 games won. Now, 73.5, I'm actually going to take the over. For some reason, I feel like this team's got some good juice to it. They feel like they greatly improved across the board, something that I love to see teams getting better. And I think that goes a lot. There's a lot to be said of a team, going out there in free agency, trying to get better for the players. And it helps the players just be that much more excited for these boys, you got to rally the troops every game for 162 games. When you go out there in free agency and you pick up some guys and say, hey, we're here to play baseball, baby. I think it definitely really, really helps the organization mindset as a whole. And I think the Kansas City Royals did a great job this offseason of, really pushing that mindset. So I'm going over the 73.5 games won. Now, we'll get to our last team here. Last team of the divisional preview, and that's going to be the White Sox. The White Sox, I feel like, are a team we can go through. We'll see how quickly we get through them, but it'll be interesting. Now, with that being said, off-season-wise, they did lose a couple pieces. They lost Grandal. They lost Liam Hendriks. I believe Mike Clevenger is not going to be coming back. Tim Anderson was lost after coming off of the worst season of his career. But, Grandal was okay at this point. I don't think he was necessarily anything to write home about. Liam Hendriks coming off of cancer and, I believe, a Tommy John. So I don't mind them stepping away from that. And Tim Anderson coming off the worst season of his career. I don't think that's a bad player to step off of either. Now, with that being said, I'm going to blow my nose because I'm a little stuffed up. Give me one sec, folks. Oh, never mind, because we're still recording. My software won't stop. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly finish this up then. So, I do like the front five of this lineup is pretty solid. I like Andrew Vaughn, young guy, shows that he's got a lot of pop. Benintendi's been around for a little bit. He's a quality outfielder, definitely a Gold Glove caliber player. Luis Robert is the superstar of this team, playing center fielder. He's a phenomenal player. There's nothing else to even be said about him. Young Moncada, a guy that personally I've had a little bit more hope for, hasn't shown that he's been the player I thought he could be. Now, maybe if he can turn those numbers around a little bit, I'd like to see him in the area of 15 home runs, batting about, 270. I think that would be perfect for Yoan Moncada. I would like to see that step up from the last year to those stats. As last year, he, had 11 home runs with a 260 average. Now, a guy that I really like, but has just had a lot of issues of staying in the field, is Eloy Jimenez. If Eloy can stay healthy for a whole season, I expect this guy to hit at least 30 home runs somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 RBIs. He's a phenomenal bat, but really the issue with this 27-year-old is that he has no ability to stay healthy. That's been his biggest knock on him for his entire career, is that if Eloy could stay healthy, Eloy would be a phenomenal player. Now, with that being said, we're going to keep kind of moving on along. We see new right field prospect for this team coming up. They did acquire him from Arizona recently, Dominic Fletcher. Going to let him get some time in the outfield this season, see how he can play. That's going to be interesting. The back end of this lineup is all filled in by free agents, which I actually don't mind. I think, going out there and showing your team you're trying to do something, trying to make this team viable. I do like that. Now, with that being said, two of the other adds, middle infielders, you're going to have Paul DeJong playing shortstop from the San Francisco Giants, formerly of the Cardinals. He's not terrible, but he's definitely not great. Nicky Lopez, same thing, coming over from Atlanta. He's going to play second base for this team. I don't think he's anything to write home about. And then you have Martin Maldonado, a guy who's not phenomenal behind the plate, or, batting at the plate, but he is phenomenal behind the plate. Now, with that being said, I'm just going to keep on moving on because my nose is getting more stuffed by the minute. So, in terms of injuries, I don't know Davis Martin or Jesse Schlotens. They both had Tommy John. I don't know if either of those guys are good. They seem to be a little bit older, on the older side of prospects. And then relief, Shane Doran and Matt Foster are hurt. I don't know those guys. We're going to pass through them. So, in terms of the starting rotation, the rotation isn't great, but it's not bad. I do like that they picked up Mike Soroka from the Atlanta Braves. I know he had some injury history last year, only got 6 starts in, but a guy I believe has had some decent career success. I've watched him play enough against my Mets to know that, I'll be honest with you, I would love to have Mike Soroka as one of my starting pitchers on the New York Mets. Now, with that being said, they do have some other decent pitching guys there. We saw Dylan Cease come off of a down year, through 33 starts, had a 4.5 ERA. I do expect him to kind of get back on track. I know he has high walk rate numbers, but I expect him to kind of get back into the, Dylan Cease of old. I like Soroka. Michael Kopech's a guy they've had in the system for a long time. Has had a lot of injury problems, but has shown he's got some special stuff. But the issue is, you can show all the special stuff you want, but if you can't pitch, it's detrimental to your team. Now, Mike Soroka, he didn't play in 2022. He didn't play in 2023. I'm sorry, in 2021, but he did play, a couple games in 2023. So I'm excited to see Soroka hopefully get back onto that 2019, 2020, 2018 track. Now, with that being said, Eric Freddie coming back from the KBO. I don't know what he looks like. Hopefully he's halfway decent. And then Chris Flexen, a guy who's been in the league for a long time. He was formerly of the Mets, and then I believe of Seattle for a little bit, then of Colorado. I don't think he's going to be anything to write home about. Chris Flexen was definitely not great on the Mets, definitely not great on Colorado, and he's definitely not going to be great now, so that's a little rough. But outside of that, I do think Kopech, maybe we could finally see if Kopech has anything or if it's time to move off of him. I like Dylan Cease. I like Soroka. I think this starting rotation has definitely improved upon itself a little bit. Now, we'll move into the bullpen. Their bullpen is still pretty bad, but John Brabia, coming over from San Francisco, I think adding a guy like him to your rotate or your bullpen is definitely going to help you. Gives you guys a true solid closer. So that's awesome. You guys also picked up Jesse Chavez. I don't know him, but clearly had a great year last year with Atlanta. Had a 1.56 through 34 innings. Awesome. They also picked up Tim Hill. Don't know much about you, but I don't like their bullpen. Their bullpen's kind of shit. Hopefully we could see Garrett Crochet potentially re-enter the starting rotation. A guy that I know they've had kind of just on the wings for a little bit. They want to see how good Garrett Crochet is at that starting rotation spot. So I have a feeling that later in the season we'll see Flexen get flexed to the rotation as that long innings reliever, and we'll see Garrett Crochet get moved into that 5th starting spot. Now, with that being said, their over-unders at 63.5. We saw them win 61 games last year. And to be honest with you, I think they're going to be a little bit better. I think they're going to go over that 63.5 games. So it's really, to me, it's dependent upon Eloy's health. I think if Eloy is able to stay healthy, this team's able to win 63 games. If not, I think they might have some trouble again. Now, with that being said, that's all the teams we have in these divisional previews. That's it. That's everything. That's everybody, every team. And I really appreciate you guys for coming out, listening, and enjoying the show with me. It means a lot. I greatly appreciate you guys. If you made it this far, I'd really appreciate you guys if you could like, subscribe, maybe throw a comment down there. I do try to reply to all the comments. So, with that being said, I really appreciate you guys coming out, listening, and spending your time with me on whatever random day you're doing it with. And with that being said, folks, have a phenomenal day.